All right. Hello, I'm Brice Hancock. This is Mile High Recovery Chat. I'm here with Keith Hayes and Matthew Jarvis. How's it going?
Hey there. Hey.
Good.
How you doing, man?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So what I want to do is I want you to introduce yourself, just like a nickel version, like who you are, what you do, and maybe relate your experience to the topic, which is why Black people don't ask for help as readily as they should, right?
Should or could, yeah.
Okay. So go ahead, Keith.
My name is Keith, and I am the Director of Recovery at 5280 High School. 5280 High School is a recovery high school that supports youth who are struggling with alcohol and drug addiction, who struggle with self-harm, who struggle with eating disorders, who just struggle with social and emotional contact with other people. So we provide a intentional kids get an opportunity to meet other kids who are dealing with the same emotions and feelings that they've dealt with in active addiction. They are able to find that community here and are able to start to work a program of recovery and stay clean and sober one day at a time. I'm also a man in long-term recovery, and I'm just grateful to be here with you guys today.
You're from Denver, right? Right, Keith?
I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, but I've been in Denver now pretty much since I was like 3 or 4 years old. So I consider myself from Denver.
All right.
Yeah.
And Matthew.
Yeah. So thanks, Keith. I'm Matthew Jarvis. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm also a licensed addiction counselor, and that's basically what I do and have been doing for the last, 18 years or something. I'm currently doing private practice. So I see individuals and couples, just kind of one-to-one, but I've worked in a lot of different settings over my career, outpatient, inpatient, therapeutic communities, sober living, all sorts of different settings. I'm also in recovery myself long-term, and I'm a survivor of childhood trauma and other things in life, depression and anxiety, addiction. And so I'm happy to be here and share about the topic.
Cool. And you're from Denver, correct?
I'm a Denver native, East Side.
All right. Okay, cool. So I think it's great. Like both you guys are like living purposeful lives. You're giving back. You're helping tons of people. And both of you guys, are from Denver basically and in long-term recovery yourself. So the topic is why people from the Black community don't ask for help, and I don't know if that's clickbait. I don't know that that's true. Is that an assumption or has that been your experience?
Matt, you want to start?
I can say a little bit. I don't want to make any assumptions, obviously. I think that within the community, within the cultural context, there is help. They do ask for help. I think it's not the kind of help that maybe we consider to be traditional or even mainstream, like treatment, therapy, therapists, stuff like that. A lot of, you do have to consider the cultural context, which is a lot of spiritual church leaders, stuff like that, community leaders, and that's where the help comes from. However, I also do think that there's a reluctance to seek help, if you put it that way, especially with African American men, even within their own communities. So that, which would be like I said, like church, other types of socials, the help's there. There is a real reluctance, at least what I've observed.
What's been your experience, Keith?
Yeah, it's a taboo situation, right? Don't nobody want to talk about it. And we're kind of raised up as if you got a problem or if you're dealing with something, right? Sometimes you need to figure it out yourself. You need to be a man, right? You need to stand on your own 2 feet and you need to figure this out, whatever you're struggling with. Or a lot of men, right, try to not let people know what's really going on. They don't want to have those conversations because they're ashamed. They have guilt. So we see a lot of that. I really struggled to own the fact that I had a problem. And even though I had all these situations, right, jails, institutions, people around me dying, I had all these life experiences that showed me, right, that something's not right here, right? You might be bodily and mentally different than other people. I couldn't take responsibility for that. I couldn't own that. I tried to get clean and sober in the church, and it didn't work for me. It didn't. And it's even in church, that can be a taboo conversation, and some people don't want to have those conversations. So Black men and some women really struggle to say, hey, I need some help. And what can I do? And there's also equity situations here where some people can't get treatment. Some people, some treatment facilities don't accept Medicaid, or they don't have access to that care. I will say this: when I was in high school, it was pretty clear that I was dealing with some substance abuse issues, and my mom tried to get me help, but we didn't have enough money to be able to get me the help that maybe I needed, and nobody was really trying to point her in the right direction to help me get what I needed. And that's another reason why, we see in the community that people don't want to ask for help.
So you're saying your mom was looking for help for you, and it wasn't being offered.
The resources were not available to her because she didn't have enough money.
Okay. And so it's economic. Matthew alluded that it's different, like you might get help in church or you might not. There's probably a stigma. Just like for anybody, I guess, but I'm sure it's more concentrated or heavier for the African-American community. And maybe some, enter through criminal justice system. Wasn't that your experience, Matthew?
Yeah. I mean, so I think that there's layers of barriers for Black men and women, just the community. Right. And I think what Keith talked about is definitely something that I've seen and experienced, which is the stigma with, men are just expected to kind of handle their business, and hold it down. And there was some of the families that I was dealing with, you didn't have time to be depressed. You didn't have time to have trauma. You didn't, there was shit was due. Bills were due. Kids needed food, stuff like that. And people learned to just persevere, so there's these barriers within the community around almost like masculinity and machismo, stuff like that. But then, I think that a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of people, I would say people of color, but also low income people, their access to mental health services comes through the criminal justice system. And there's a definite difference, if we look like over the last decade or so of how certain groups of people with addictive disorders and mental health problems are responded to by society, which is another, it's frustrating and it's heartbreaking, and it's the reality. And I'm probably a lot like Keith, where, as a kid, it was obvious I was having problems. I was angry, lashing out, my kid, acting out, and I needed help. My mom just said, I need help. She tried to get me to talk to people, but it was, I can say that I'm 50 in a month, but the care and the help that's available now is way different than it was when I was in high school. I mean, there really was not much. And so we've come a long way, and we've got a long way to go.
Yep.
All right. I'm having technical difficulties.
It's all right. We hear you.
Okay. So I'm going to try to let some of these comments come in here too. My friend Gordon he's got some things to say, and maybe you guys can respond to him as we're going through this. So you eventually got, both you guys are like 12-step dudes at this point, but I know, Matthew, you went to Stout Street, right?
Yeah.
Was that something that you trickled down to through the criminal justice system?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It got offered to me as an option. I was in trouble with drug trouble, legal trouble. I was having problems with my anger and stuff like that. And they basically said you can go to jail or you can go to this treatment program. Which again, Colorado's a treatment first state, and they've always been progressive like that. There's in Colorado, you don't mess with the kids and you don't mess with the women in Colorado. They're very progressive in that way. So I was offered treatment every time I got into trouble. There was treatment available to me. Now the question was, are you actually going to go do it? And I was so scared of my drug addiction And at the time I was scared of jail. I didn't realize that that my addiction was actually scarier than jail. But I was, I took the help, man. When they said we have a path out of this, I took it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my buddies didn't.
Okay. What was your
Stout Street was the next resource for me, man.
Yeah, well, we use Stout Street. I mean, it's free but it's long and it's kind of it's tough. It's not this easier, softer way. It's like a last chance, right? It's like you're either going to get sober, you're going to be in prison or back on the streets, right? And I hate to say this, but like a lot of tough guys go to Stout Street and come out of Stout Street, right?
Yeah.
It's no joke. Like, it's no joke. Like, we get guys and we'll take them and we'll say, you're going to go to Stout Street as like almost like a threat.
Punishment.
Yeah. Like, you better
shape up or you're going to Stout Street.
Right. And sometimes it works, man. You got sober. How'd you get sober, Keith?
So my disease was very progressive. For a long time, I was a functioning alcoholic and a drug addict. I was able to build up a career. I was able to purchase a home with my ex-wife. I was able to acquire some things in my life, but my addiction caught up to me. Before I knew it, I was getting divorced. And before you knew it, I was running and gunning in the streets full time. I didn't make it into the rooms of sobriety until I was 35 years old. And I was on probation. I was about to be sent back to prison. And my probation officer said, I'm going to give you one opportunity. Because by then I was beaten. I was broken. I was willing to do anything because I was sick and tired of the hopelessness and futility as life as I had been living it. And my probation officer allowed me to go to the Denver Salvation Army ARC. And that's also another hardcore program. All right. That is not some Malibu beach club where you got your feet kicked up. Like, you're going to come in there, you're going to work in this warehouse, you're going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to show you how to live again. And I needed all that because I didn't know how to eat breakfast. I didn't know how to eat lunch. I wasn't eating dinner, right? I wasn't taking showers. I wasn't taking care of myself, right? I had lost all my self-worth in active addiction, and having to go to that tough environment and learning how to discipline myself and learn how to live again was exactly what I needed. But again, it's a free program. That's why I was able to go. I wouldn't have been able to go to any other treatment facility because I didn't have any kind of insurance. So that's what I needed. And you work there in the warehouse. You go to chapel when we tell you to go to chapel. You eat when we tell you to eat. You go to the bathroom when we tell you can go to the bathroom. But that's exactly what I needed. But it's real deal. It's hardcore. And not everybody, can handle that environment to be able to get sober.
All right. Yeah. So what's it like? Because I looked up a couple stats, not very many. But I'm from Baltimore. It's like, so the city the makeup is 65% Black. Denver is 10%. So I'm imagining, and I got sober here in Denver. I didn't get sober in Baltimore. I'm imagining, and I'll be honest, I can count there's a handful of Black men and women that I know from, the rooms. What's it like? Is there when you come in, because we're all broken and really depressed and not very happy about what's going on when we come in. Did you experience any kind of just straight up racism?
Matt, you came in before me. You want to give your experience first?
You know what? I can't really speak to that, man. You know what? I think that I'm light complected, and I think that I've had experiences with law enforcement and just out on the streets that if I honestly believe that if my skin was a few shades darker, it wouldn't have went the way that it did for me. I did see things happen to my friends that the same exact shit happened to me, and it didn't play out the way it did for me. So, I consider that to be my privilege. However, I do feel that I've experienced, the effects of systemic racism and a lack of access to services. And really, one of the only places that I saw successful Black men, and I mean successful at overcoming their trauma and their drug addictions and living productive lives, was in the 12-step programs. That's one of the only places I had ever seen that. And maybe that's because of the type of places I was hanging out. But one of the things about Stout Street that was so heartbreaking for me was there was a lot of people when I was there back in the early 2000s. There was a lot of guys from Baltimore there, black dudes from Baltimore. And when I got up on that stage and graduated, none of them were there. And none of the black men were there either. So that's been a consistent theme over my career and my experience. It's just a lot of people don't complete treatment when they get into it. And like I said, I finally had to make it to the rooms, and I found some guys that had that I needed. I think Keith can probably attest. I need to see that. I needed to know what that looked like to stabilize. And then when I started getting to know these guys, they had one other thing that they had overcome, in addition to everything else, was living in a society that didn't value their lives very much for most of their lives. So, I don't know where that's going, but
yeah. No, I'm with Matthew on that. I'm gonna be totally blunt. If it wasn't for the black men who were in the 12-step fellowship when I came, there's no way I would have stayed. I wouldn't have stayed. I probably would have went back out and continued to kill myself. And there were some black men, including Matthew J., who was there when I got there, that gave me some hope. Because even getting out of treatment with 6 months sober, I still wasn't sure. I thought maybe I could go back to being a cucumber, right?
Yeah.
Right? I wasn't quite sure if I was the pickle, right? And when I got there, there was some men and some women who had been there. And they had been there for a while. 20 plus years, 30 plus years. I think when I met Matt, he was already like 13 or 14 years sober. So it was so critical that they were there when I got there, or I wouldn't have stayed. And that's why it's so important to me today to stay for that next black man or that next black woman that comes in, so they can see that, yes, we can live like this too. We can live by spiritual principles too. We don't have to go back to that chaos and calamity that we love so much, and that it's okay to be clean and sober. It's okay to not run with your own crew anymore and do something different. And I had to see that from other people who looked like me. And to piggyback on your other question you have, Brice, is, yeah, I go to meetings all the time and I'm the only black person in the room, right? And that's okay. Because at the end of the day, I know what my truth is. And my truth is I need to carry the message to the addict and alcoholic who still suffers. I don't care what color they are. The majority of my sponsees are Caucasian males. So, and that's fine. And I don't discriminate. This disease does not discriminate. It don't care how much money you got. It don't care what color you are. It's a certified killer. It's a certified killer. And at the end of the day, we're going to try to help as many men and women as we can, because that is our purpose today.
Yeah. It's funny because like when I was out there doing drugs, there was plenty of black men I was doing drugs with, and the ratio was a lot higher than the amount of black men that I see in the rooms, like you're saying. And I think that's a shame, and I hate to say this, but it doesn't really surprise me. I've known for a while, I had a friend who was black and was gay, and he said that it was, when he came out, there was like this extra layer of like, you're black. Are you really going to come out as gay? Like it's like an extra thing. Like, why pile that on top of what we're already dealing with, right? And I was recently just talking to somebody who's a nurse, and they taught her in school that it's a white privilege. Like if I go in and I say I'm experiencing pain, I'm probably going to get given opioids, Percocets or Vicodins. And on the flip side, if a black man or a Hispanic man goes in, they're probably not going to get those opioids. They're probably going to be told, because they'll think they're drug seeking, right? Mm-hmm. You're okay. Here's some Tylenol. Go deal with the pain, right? And so I know this is a reality, right? I'm not that naive, right? And so, like, I don't know if there's a takeaway from any of this, or if we're just talking, right? Is there a takeaway from any of this conversation?
Well, I mean, I think there is. I think it's important to acknowledge it, that there's problems on both sides, that there's problems within the community itself that there's just barriers. It's a lot of black men and women just aren't seeking the help that's out there. And, you know, I worked at a pretty prominent treatment center for over 10 years. And I'm not lying when I tell you not one black man or woman, one woman came the whole time I was there, not one black man, and that for surely did not complete. And so that tells me that there is a problem with access for whatever. If the help's not there, they're not finding it, because it's these places help, you know. And there would be times when I'm walking around this hospital, I'm like, where's all your black people? And I had to look in the mirror. It's like, it's you're the one that made it. You have to do this. It's you. And maybe that's kind of what Keith was talking about. It's kind of a stark realization that, like, hey, there's not many folks making it, you know. And I think a good question to ask, like, where we go, is when you're sitting in your recovery room, whatever you do to recover, look around that room. Who's missing? Who's not there? Because that's going to tell you, like, hey, man, like, not everybody's making it here. Just look around the room. Yep. And you know what I'm saying? And, like, I have some good news, you know, with the advent of coronavirus and telehealth and all that. I've actually got more black men on my caseload now than I've ever had. And maybe it was an access thing, and this is just way safer of a way to get help, is just to go like this and not have to walk into a building and not have to talk to a bunch of people or whatever. But now that I'm able to work with men one-to-one the way that I am, it's no different. The trauma's no different. The depression's no different. They need the same services that everybody else is getting. So yeah, that was a lot, but
no, I don't know. It's, you know, this is an important conversation. I mean, I work in treatment, and Medicaid the treatment's not as good, right? But the truth is, like, and I got sober, like, kind of like you guys. I mean, maybe more like Keith, not from prison, but I went to a psych hospital and then lots of AA meetings. Like, I didn't go to a fancy treatment center. I believe you can get sober on the street if you really want to, and you hit the 12-step meetings and you reach out for help. But I guess that's what we're talking about, is maybe people aren't reaching out for help because they feel like there's not going to be any help, right?
And there's definitely guilt and shame. I didn't see his name who said something, but there's definitely guilt and shame in the community saying, hey, I don't want to go to those meetings, right? Because then I got to go admit that I got a problem. I don't even like using the word, right? Alcoholic or addict, right? Black men and women have struggled with just uttering those words because there is that stigma, right? But the truth is that I wasn't able to get access to the power of recovery until I could take responsibility and own my truth. And my truth is that I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and I need to work a program of recovery today if I want to live. And that's the deal. Now, let me ask you this, though. So if you go to LA, right? You go to LA, you'll go to a meeting and it's 200 black people, right? And they all got 20, 25 plus years, and they run treatment facilities, and they've got sober livings out there. I know the demographics is a lot different, but LA Black recovery is phenomenal. And the 12-step fellowship that I belong to, they're the ones who laid down all the groundwork for the fellowship that we currently have today in LA. And I mean, Black recovery out there is huge. It's such a big deal. Their outreach is so huge out there, and they are living it and they are doing it. But when I sit down with somebody here in Denver and talk recovery with them, a black male, they don't want to hear what I'm talking about. They ain't trying to hear it. They gonna figure it out. But in LA, recovery is just a normal thing, and it's not so stigmatized and so taboo in LA.
Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Maybe that's where we're headed. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I can tell you personally, when the best therapist I ever had was a black woman, just on a side note. So, and I think he's right. The origins of Cocaine Anonymous are from Los Angeles, and there's a huge movement out there. The demographics in Colorado don't support it the way it does out there. But there's I would say there's a pretty strong movement here as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it's picking up here because, it says powerless over all substances. And I don't meet just straight up alcoholics anymore. I just don't.
Right.
Plus the AA fundamentalists tend to turn people off, especially young people.
Yeah.
So that's.
And I think part of it is us having these conversations, us talking about it, us acknowledging it. And, at the end of the day, I'm willing to meet anybody wherever they're at and have these difficult conversations about recovery. What is recovery like? What is recovery about? But it is important that you are bringing this to the forefront so we can get the word out there that there is Black men and Black women in Colorado who are recovering, who are getting well, who are helping the next man or the next woman get well. And that's how you grow this thing out. And then it won't be so taboo, or because I wear it with a badge of honor today. I do. I wear it with a badge of honor today because the men and the Black men and women that I met in the fellowship, they wore it with a badge of honor, and that was passed down to me. So I'm just trying to give it back to the next person the same way it was given to me.
You're sort of talking about personal responsibility. Like, in order to really get well, you have to stop blaming everybody, and that's anybody across the board, right?
Yeah.
And you sort of got to take responsibility. Like, my decisions got me here. My choices got me here. My decisions and my choices are going to get me out of this, right?
Yeah. Personal accountability is a fundamental pillar of recovery, right? We all have to learn that. And I also think, like what Keith, it's our responsibility to be inclusive, because not only is it hard to ask for help just in general, but you walk into these rooms, these 12-step programs, historically, they didn't welcome anybody if you weren't a white Christian. I mean, they're gays, handicaps, Blacks, nobody. So for us to embrace this program and then actually make it work, it says something about the power of inclusion. And like I said before, it's like, just look around where you're at. It's not just Black people. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And there is a real deficit there. But look around the room. Who else is missing from that room?
Yep.
Who's not here?
Yep.
And that's what my sponsor, I'm in a 12-step program too. I don't know if I already said that, but like, he used to have me go up to people after meetings and talk to them, man. It was so awkward. I hated, like, that guy right there, go talk to him. And I have to go talk to him, like, so what's up? So you got a drug problem, huh? Me too. Okay, see you later. And after a while, I started getting it, So I see people come in that I make a point of, like, my job is to include, at least make an effort, because us people in recovery, Black men, all sorts of different types of people, we might be the only, like the only door that they have to something better. Does that make sense? And so, so I feel like we all have a responsibility to be inclusive. And the current political situation it makes it hard for all of us. But sometimes I think we have to just say fuck all that, and be as inclusive as we possibly can, because that's our primary purpose.
Yeah, I mean, AA was built off of racism. Black men and women couldn't go to the AA meetings when they first started having AA, right? There wasn't a first Black AA meeting going on until the 50s, right? So it started that way, right? So people already felt a certain type of way about 12-step recovery because we weren't welcome from the very beginning. And that goes back to this the systematic racism problem that we have around addiction and around recovery. And that's why a lot of people say, hey, look, they didn't want us to begin with. I'm not going to go mess with them. That is part of the issue. And until they can meet more and more people who are like, no, we're not knocking on the door no more, we kicking the door down, and people will start to be like, okay, I'm going to kick the door down with you.
Yeah, well, AA was started by two white guys a long time ago. Even like the way it's written, it's hard to understand. For me, I'm white. I can barely understand what they're saying. The language they use is so old-fashioned. Yeah. And I know women have a problem with the fact that it was two white guys that started it. But it is what it is, right? And now it's changed, and it's changing. And I think it had to change. It has to be and continue to change, or it's not going to be around. So I feel like programs like CA and like just probably like I said before, like I'm imagining a 12-step group in Baltimore, a home group in Baltimore might be more diverse than a 12-step group here in Denver. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't get sober there, but I'm just assuming. So I don't know. I think it's a great conversation.
There's a comment about why, people of color and minorities are reluctant to ask for help or something like that. And I think, again, there's historical context there, right? That communities of color, Black people, but other communities as well, just historically, there's been a real trust issue with agencies and organizations that didn't necessarily have their best interests in mind. And that includes law enforcement. Yeah. So the relationship that certain communities have with the helpers has not been a great relationship. So people lean on their own communities and their own churches and stuff like that. And again, that's why I think that's a barrier, is there's just been a huge trust issue, specifically between the Black community, any kind of agency that's set up to help, right? Now, that's what makes it so much more important that when they do show up at the door, we are there to help. That we are there to respond, because historically it just hadn't gone that well. You didn't ask for. You weren't getting no help. I mean, that's just the ugly truth of it.
That's the systemic thing, right? Like there's like straight up racism where like someone just doesn't like people with another color, and then there's the systemic thing, which is just kind of like our society, right? Which puts like Black communities at a disadvantage from the get.
Yeah, I think there's systems in play. Like I said, Denver's a pretty progressive city. A lot is changing. However, systems in place historically, they weren't designed for these other communities. And it was a lot of there's times where bad stuff happened when you went into these places. It wasn't good. And so some of that's changing. When people ask like, why are people so reluctant? It's just, it hasn't gone the same for everybody. Why don't they ask for help? And that doesn't mean the help's not there. And those terrible experiences from the past are still burned into the memories of the community, right? And that's something that we have to take seriously and work to overcome.
Yeah. Sure. And not to downplay that, but it's like you said, the help is there, right?
Oh, it's there. Yeah.
And the truth is, it's hard for anybody to ask for help, but not to downplay color. It's hard to ask for help. But it's like you said, the help is there. So if someone is struggling, just ask for help. And if someone says no, ask somebody else for help.
And it's tough. If you've been oppressed for a long time, it's hard to go ask your oppressors for help, right? And for me, again, if I did not see my tribe when I came in, that's the thing. That's what makes recovery attractive, is when you come in, you meet some people, right, who you are attracted to, that you can relate to, right? And that's what brings you in and be like, hey, maybe I can do this. And when you go into certain places and you're the only person of color in there, it's going to be hard sometimes for certain people to find people that they're attracted to that makes them want to stay.
Sure. The tragedy about all of it is that means less people are getting help. And so less people are going to be here to like continue to help other people, right? Less people to carry the message. And like you guys are like perfect examples of, what happens when somebody gets sober and they're just like filled with that, like that recovery, like that good recovery. You just continue to pay it forward.
Yeah. Continue to outreach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think we're about out of time. You guys want to add anything else?
No, I think that this is an important topic, that we talk about this. I do think that there's the criminalization of addiction, and not just addiction, but mental health problems, has affected low income and people of color negatively. That when I say criminalization, I mean that people that if you see somebody on the street that's having a mental health problem or an addiction problem, if they're a person of color, they're more likely to be incarcerated as a result of that.
Yep.
It's just a fact. And I think all of us have to look at ourselves and how we see other people. And that is personal responsibility. It's not just, we all have those tendencies to judge, to prejudge, to say that person, something's wrong with that person and they can do better. We all do that. And I think Brice, putting yourself out here and your company and your business really to say, hey, I don't know, I'm gonna take a shot at this thing. That's what we need. We need to start talking about this stuff in a respectful and inclusive way.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny because one of my trainers is Black. His name is Brian Handlos. And this morning I was like, man, I hope I don't say anything stupid.
Too late. Too late.
Yeah. Hey, but I just want to say, Brice, I appreciate you. I remember when we had this conversation a couple of months ago, that you were interested in having this conversation. So I'm definitely grateful, and thank you for allowing me to be able to speak to it. I just want to say to everybody out there that no matter what your color is, creed, religion, your economical, social status, if you're struggling, if you're dealing with things in life, you don't have to have guilt around it. You don't have to have shame around it. It's okay to say, hey, I need some help, right? And I'm willing to do something to try to get some help, and that's okay. We've been there. We know what that feels like. We've dealt with those feelings of terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair, and we can relate and we get it. And there's another way that you can live today, and you don't have to live in those feelings and those emotions anymore. And it's okay to say, hey, I need some help. And if anybody needs some help from me, please reach out to me. You can reach me here on Facebook. Please reach out because that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. So, my man, right. Appreciate you.
You guys are awesome. Thanks a lot. To my friend Gordon, hey, man, there's no way to call into the show. He really wanted to call in and kind of like
big shout out to Gordon.
So sorry about that, Gordon. You guys are awesome once again. Thanks. See ya.
Thanks, Brice. You guys take care, man.